thank you for your glory. Thank you for your holiness. We ask to guide us, anoint us, and be with us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so how's everyone doing? Good, good. You know, I listen to Joel Osteen on the half hour for jokes, and lately all I've heard is reruns. So I have no more jokes, all right, just to let you know. All right, so reflections, right? Really, are we reflecting Jesus Christ? You know, so how many people read your verses? Outstanding. So I was told that hey, you send a lot of verses out. So what I'm trying to do is say, okay, this is probably what I'll cover. You know, might go over, might have an extra verse or so, but we'll be pretty close. So this way I won't send them all out at one time to y'all. So that way you can read it. You know, now we know we don't see Jesus' reflection in the mirror, but do we see our own reflection, right? Or do you see the holiness of God? What do you see when you look into the mirror? Um, you know, one of the things is what are we reflecting to others, right? When we go out into the world, or even when we come into here, do we reflect Christ? You know, do we reflect Christ to others? Um, you know, one of the things that I know, I remember back when I was growing up, and I wasn't a Christian, but it seemed like the Christians were always pointing out your flaws, you know. And then I know when I was in the army, there was Christians there, and they consistently pointed out my immorality and consistently told me that I was going to go to hell, you know. But the thing that I didn't understand is they're sitting there pointing there at me, but yet they were doing the same things I was doing, right? You know, and then hell, is there really a hell? You know, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I thought it was going to be worm food. So, you know, you got to understand who you're talking to, the audience, and how do you present the reflection of Christ upon others. You know, it doesn't mean that we have to say, oh, God is love, so therefore anything you do is okay. I mean, if you were going to, you know, jump off a cliff and you said, I love you, so go ahead because you chose to, or would you prevent them because you love them, right? Well, so when we live a lifestyle that's not in alignment with God, we may want to present information to them that represents and reflects the image of God. Does that make sense? So I remember one time I was trying to see how I can present this. So, but you know, for example, you know, you see someone smoking a cigarette. Let's say they do it in front of the church. You know, and you go up to them and you know, why are you going to do that in front of the church? You know, this is God's house. You know, you're sinning, and your reflection of God's house is not representing God, right? And you're scolding that person. But if they're smoking a cigarette in front of God's house, one may not be a Christian yet, right? Two, maybe they're new Christians. Maybe there's other things God's working on, you know. Or could you walk up to them and maybe present it in a different manner, right? You know, a manner that maybe isn't so abrasive. Do you know what I mean? So those are things that we do, and I know that people used to do that to me. You know, when I was walking and I wasn't following Christ, I wasn't even a Christian. I was agnostic. I mean, I figured there was probably something out there. I just didn't know for sure what it was, you know. But what does a Christian look like? Is this what you see when you think of a Christian? Now, granted, don't get bent around the shape. These guys are young. I'm talking about a normal person, right? Do you see someone that's normal, that's cordial? You know, but see, that doesn't matter what you see. What matters is what does everyone else see in us, right? Because a lot of times, you know, you get these Christians that say, oh, I'm a Christian, especially the ladies now, right? And you're walking around looking like this right here, right? Oh, look at me, I'm a Christian, but yet you're kind of a little too sexy. We won't keep that one up there too long. But how about this one right here, right? This is a Christian person, and it's a progressive Christian. They support abortion, right? I don't understand how you can be a Christian and you support killing of infant children, right? Right? They don't know the Bible. Even if I don't think they know Jesus. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the way I am. I mean, how can you support this? How in your brain do you say this is okay? You know what I don't understand is they'll support abortion and celebrate it, if you will, but then they stand over here and say, we don't want capital punishment for these guys that murdered people, right? To me, it's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. If you're going to support, death, then support death. Or if you're going to support life, then support life. But really what we need to do is support what God says. God says, thou shalt not murder, right? Which, if you kill someone, someone's just asking me, what's the difference between killing and murder? Now, if you have a King James Bible, in the Ten Commandments, it says kill, because when they wrote that in 1611, kill was understood as murder, okay? So what's the difference between the two? Well, one, if you drove around a corner and a person jumped out in front of your car, you accidentally hit them and they died, you didn't murder them, you killed them, right? It wasn't something you did with intent. If you go to war, at least this is my perspective, and people may have different perspectives than I do, but I'm defending myself. There is intent that I'm going to kill them, but it's for the greater good. Now you got to keep in mind, a lot of times people don't think it because I'm thinking he's the bad guy, but he also thinks I'm the bad guy, right? So we have to understand that. But now murder is something you do with intent, with malice, and even if it's spontaneous like Moses, right? But he did it with hatred in his heart. That's murder. So abortion, well, they don't have hatred in their heart. I would say they do. They have hatred for that life that lives in them. They don't want that life that lives in them because they find that it's going to be an inconvenience or whatever their logic and reason is, right? So this is a Christian person that supports that, and I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that they don't know God, right? What about a woke Christian, right? What about a woke Christian? This is a Christian that believes in the critical race theory, or Black Lives Matters, or yeah, or they're teaching and they're okay with teaching our elementary school, and I think fourth grade is not the time to teach them about sexuality, but that's okay. Should see some of this materials that they're trying to give these young kids. I remember one time I was asking the sheriff I said, well, what happened if I took that same book that they're trying to put into the library and showed my neighbor kid, which is, 12 or so, because we'd arrest you. But yet, we're doing this in the schools, right? And there's many other things that wokeness represents, but the one thing it doesn't represent is Christ, right? But yet, there's Christians out there that say they're woke. Right? They support this stuff. They support that, But I think they're asleep, actually, right? Because if you're awake, right, then you see the truth. So, and this is the one, and I already talked about this, is the angry Christian, right? And we see that, and we just got through this series where we talked about what fruit lives in you. Because, when you look at, why does God say we need to look at our fruit and not look at our miracles or hear our voices, or, why does he say look at our fruit? Anybody want to gather that? Huh? That's what we're called to do? See, because God doesn't say, hey, look at the person performing miracles. They're a Christian. Oh, look at the person that is preaching. They're a Christian, right? Look at the person that's doing this. No, what he says is, look at their fruit. Because eventually, the fruit will expose the real fruit, right? So because can you guys, all right, let's say a gangster guy, right? Who's the worst gangster? Well, El Chapo, all right? Now, he's a gangster guy from Mexico. His name's probably not because he chopped up sausages, right? So now that guy could have mercy, right? Because I've heard cartel people coming into a village and wiping out the entire village, but we're going to save your family. I'm going to have mercy upon you, right? Or give grace to somebody, or I'm going to be patient with you, right? But the one thing they can't truly show is love, because they don't have that. And I think that's why love is first in and the fruit of the Spirit. I believe God's a God of order. You look at the gifts of the Spirit, what are the first two? Wisdom and knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge and the wisdom to use the gifts right, you're going to mess it up, right? And then you got to have faith in order to be truly with that. I can sit there and prophesy, but I don't have faith that it's real, right? Then all I'm doing is faking it, you know? And we get that today, do we not? We get people that will do miracles, they'll do healings, they'll prophesy, they'll speak in tongues, but they don't really have faith that God's doing it, but they have faith that they can trick you all. Do they not? You guys know that, the one where they lengthen the foot? Have you guys seen that? So let me see put your legs out here. Let me see. Oh, you got one shorter than the other. Look at that. See that? It's shorter. Let me pray for you and watch it grow, right? And they do these things, but they know that they're tricking. Why are they tricking? Because they want to be glorified, right? Now what does that show? Is that a reflection of Christ, especially when they get caught, you know? What's that one guy's name? I think he's in Florida. Actually, if I said that one day, you'd probably name 15 of them. But, oh man, no, not Benny Hinn, that's one of them. Huh? Nope, not Todd White. Nope, keep going. Nope, not that one. Anyways, see, I told you guys keep naming. Who? Nope, not that one. I haven't heard of that one. But anyways, he's the richest guy. He's worth like $700 million. Yes. Nope. Who'd you say? I don't know where he's from. Kenneth Copeland. Wherever he's from. All right. I mean, I watch it. He's like angry, you know. Go ahead. I command you. You know. One of the things we do have to be careful about is when we say I command. You know. Now, if you're doing it because you're limited on your vocabulary, that's fine. But I can't command anything. I can only do it through Christ. You know. Now, I do understand that there are times where we say, you know, Lord, I'm going to pray over you. I'm going to command this sickness to be out, right? And we're doing it, it's not because we're wanting to glorify ourselves, but we're doing it because that's the kind of way we speak. You know, it's like Moses, you know. God, don't kill all these people. You know, there are some good ones, all this stuff, you know. Narrows it down to a few, and God changed his mind. Well, that's from his perspective. You got to remember, we're spectators in all this. But why would God change his mind if he already knows the beginning to the end, right? He knows the outcomes. So he's not going to change his mind, but maybe from my perspective it looks like that. So I understand that when we speak sometimes, but you can tell when the person's speaking for God on behalf of God, and they're speaking for themselves and on behalf of themselves. And Kenneth Copeland is one of those guys that just, I have a hard time with him and these other pastors, you know. I'm not here to judge them, like Joel Osteen, for example. He's one that keeps being thrown out up there, you know. I've seen some things on him, but the one thing that I did see, they edited it out, actually, when they asked him about the one I seen about gays, right? They edited out the other part that he said, and he said, no, that isn't correct. The way he treats them is this way and all that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't watch him, you know. I'm not here. But there are other ones out there that are just, it's too obvious, you know. You know, so we got to be careful. But see, this is what people are seeing, you know. They're seeing Benny Hinn taking his coat and everybody falling down, right? You know. And maybe it is true. I don't know. I haven't been to a Benny Hinn crusade, right? But that's what people see. And then what do they think when we do this, right? You go to a rock concert in a mosh pit and they're all jumping around all crazy, right? And they're doing it out of excitement, you know? So are we being healed because we're truly healed, or are we being healed for that moment because we're excited, right? So, as someone asked me this morning, they didn't get the connections of these things, of your verses, right? But it's about representation of what do they see? What is the reflection that the world sees us? And now we can't fight with the world when the world distorts the mirror image of Christ they're representing, because that's what they want to see. And I kind of see that more and more today. I mean, nobody's come here and badmouth me, or nobody's out there in the streets of badmouth me as a Christian, but maybe some of you have had that happen. Anybody ever had that happen to them? Yeah? But I do know that it might be coming. And if we follow the scriptures and read the scriptures, it will be coming, right? But what I'm talking about is the people that are open to hearing Christ. The ones that maybe have no opinion whatsoever, right? And then who are we representing? Are we representing the angry Christian? Are we representing the woke Christian? Now, why would we want to represent the woke Christian? Well, that way if I can be this, then they'll like me. And then because they like me, then they'll come to church. But my question is, what are they teaching at the church? Right? And what are you really presenting? Because why do I want to present a different religion, a different philosophy, a different theology of Christ in order to bring people to Christ? Because then they're not following the truth of God. Besides that, God already says they're going to hate you because of me. Right? So don't be woke because you're trying to get people coming in. Don't support because you're a Christian, right? I had one time someone tell me, did you vote for Biden, right? And they weren't talking to me, but they were talking about something that they had. And the person says, yes, they did vote for Biden. And they said, how could you vote for Biden, for somebody that supports abortion and all these things, and call yourself a Christian, right? I would wonder the same. But it seems like a lot of times when we're voting for Republicans, they're doing the same, you know? It is hard when we do this, but you want to support the people that closely supports the values of Christ. But remember, we're not here to say, oh, the politicians must be Christians and must be this, because you only got so much control. You got one vote, right? So do your best. But really what I'm talking about is, are we representing Christ to the person out here? Because I'm not going to meet Donald Trump. I'm not going to meet Joe Biden. I'm not going to meet any of these famous. I'm not meeting, Joel Osteen even, you know? He's not going to come to my house and have lunch with me. But the person out there may. And who are we representing? You know? We don't want to have them come over your house and you end up being the sexy Christian, especially they don't want to come to my house and see me that way, right? Wearing a half shirt, you know. So, let's read here. And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with every increasing glory which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. Now, this is when we get in relationship with him, this is what we should be reflecting. And the more you get into Christ, the more you get in relationship with Christ, the more you start to look like Christ. Would you agree? The greatest characteristics of a Christian is exhibiting the qualities of Christ. Does it mean that we do it all the time? No, we don't do it all the time. But we want to do it the best we can. And the more we try, the more it works. Have you guys ever heard, give 110%? Have you ever heard that? How many people have heard that saying? Most of you, some of you haven't heard that saying. That's kind of strange. All right. It used to bother me because I was, I'm like, there's only 100%. How are you going to give 110%? That doesn't make any sense. And then as I learned and as I grew older and I started doing things that were difficult, really what it means is you're going to give more effort than you think you have. Does that make sense? And see, once you do that, give more effort, and you start doing it really well, then you give another 110%. So then all of a sudden that becomes your norm. Now that's no longer 110%. That's your average. Does that make sense? Who's the one guy, the speaker in Florida? I'm certified with him. John Maxwell, right? All right. John Maxwell had people talking to him and says, how are you able to do so much and basically run us into the ground? And this guy was a young guy. He was probably, let's say, 30. And Maxwell, I think, was he's in his 60s for sure, maybe even close to 70 at the time. How do you do this? He says, because I did it when I was young. I did it and I pushed myself and pushed myself. So now I'm actually not pushing myself. I'm not even up to standard necessarily for myself, but because my standard was so high that you're trying to reach it. You're struggling to do that. And see, really that's what we should be doing with Christ. You know, we should be pushing into him until we're exhausted. Teresa and I, this weekend, we've been working at the hot dog stand for the Little League Baseball. You know, we're working a lot of hours, and you get worn out. But the question is, do you do that much for God? Right? Do you get worn out for him? And then the truth of the matter is you might get, how many people here, when you start reading the Bible, fall asleep? Right? Okay? So you're reading the Bible and you get worn out because you read it so much that you fell asleep. Right? But that's okay, at least you're reading the Bible. Right? And then if you read it for 10 minutes, and then maybe the next time you read it for 15 minutes. And then maybe the next time you read it for 20 minutes. And then maybe the next time you study it for 20 minutes. I'd much rather you study for 20 minutes than just to read it. Because how many people have read a book? And how many people went to school? All right, everybody in here has gone to some school. Bill apparently is non-educated at all. Just skipped over everything. No college, no grade school, no elementary school, no nothing. But anyways, you go to school, and I remember you're studying, right? And you're reading page after page after page, and then you get done, and you're like, I don't even remember what I read. And you got to go back and read it again. Does that happen to you guys, right? See, and that's what happens a lot of times when we're reading the Bible. Actually, one of the best ways I've learned to read the Bible, and if you guys download our app, I can promote our app. Get our app, it's free, all right? All right, if you download our app, it's got a Bible on there that it reads to you. And honestly, when I study, that's what I do. I have it read to me, and I read along with it at the same time, when I'm studying the scriptures. But study the verses, study the scriptures. So once you get it in you, you start to reflect that. The Bible tells you what is in you will come out, right? So God created man in his image. In the image of God created him, male and female, he created them. He created us in his image. Now, it doesn't mean we got to run around and be many gods, right? He's God, so therefore I'm a demigod, right? That's not what it means. And it doesn't mean I can do the things that he did, all right? Keep that in mind. I don't care how hard you try, you're not going to create a universe, all right? I mean, even for you guys when you're in grade school, you tried to create the galaxies or the planets and you lined them up, they didn't come to life, all right? But what does this mean we're created in his image? And I got a few things here, his attributes, his characteristics. These are some of the things that you have. All right? So what does this mean? And this isn't all-inclusive. It's not an exhausting list, so you could add to it, but it still needs to be in alignment with God. Don't add something about God that you like, right? Oh, I like this, so I'm going to add this to my life. Because we see that today, do we not? When we go, I mean, one of the things, and this is just me, and I've prayed on it, I've thought about it, and I try, is I could stand up here and give you stories, right? I got lots of life stories I could give you, but I can't get myself to do that. Because I think the stories that are in the scriptures, the Bible, I think, is the essence of what I should be teaching here. Here's something that I want you guys to understand. And now, this is what I believe to be true, all right? I could probably find some verses, gathering of the saints, all right, to support this. But I don't believe Sunday service is for the unbeliever. I don't think the Sunday service is a recruiting tool so we can bring in more people. I do know culturally that there is that aspect. But I believe Sunday service is for you guys, the Christian, to learn about God's word, to have a better understanding. I mean, most of us in this room probably are not well educated in the scriptures, right? But see, when God called me to the ministry, I wanted to show myself approved. And I knew if I was going to do this, I had to study and I had to go get learned, if you will. So I went to Northwest University. I got a master's in ministry. It doesn't mean I'm the smartest guy in the world. It doesn't make me great. It just means I put effort in so I do well. You know what I mean? I learned about Hebrew and the studies of scriptures so I could present it better. But that's not your guys' job. That's my job, right? Your guys' job is to reflect the image of God and demonstrate his attributes, to demonstrate his character, right? To be loving, to be caring. You don't have to be a theologian. How many people out on the street has met somebody that didn't know the Bible or that wasn't a Christian? And I'm talking about that was not a Christian ever. I'm not talking about the guy that went to church, grew up in the church, his parents were pastors, they learned the Bible, then they got mad at everybody and left the church, and now they want to debate with you. I'm not talking about those. I'm just talking about regular people. How many people here have gotten big theological debates with just normal people that are not Christians? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. It doesn't happen that often, though. Most people just want to know what God did for you, or who is this God? Why do you like him, right? That's what they're more interested in. Don't worry about being crazy deep into theology. Now, the more you study, the more it gets into you, the better you're going to be at it, the stronger you're going to be at it, right? So when stuff hits the fan, right? Ring. All right, when it hits the fan, then you guys are going to be better equipped to take care of yourself. Now, I remember I just had this conversation. I remember when I was talking about Jesus being in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Remember, and he fasted for 40 days. And then at the end, he was tempted 4 times. Remember that? Right? But he was not tempted 4 times. He was tempted how many times? 3 times. See, when I made that mistake and I caught it right afterwards, this is a while ago, but nobody caught it. It's not a bag on you guys. You're showing grace to me, but the reality is we need to know these things. But he really, if you really want to talk about it, he was probably tempted every day because that's what the scriptures say. It wasn't just tempted, those are the 3 that were highlighted. But how did Jesus defend himself? Through the scriptures. The armor of God, that's what we need to be putting on. Right? You don't have to quote it, but you have to know it. What does God say about should you or should you not get drunk? Don't be drunkards, right? Should or should you not live in a relationship with someone outside of marriage and be intimate? Right? So, because these might be some questions that you have, right? How would you answer them? Right? Well, God's love, and he's, it's okay to be like this. How do you answer that? Do you answer it dogmatically? Do you answer it in a manner that is loving? Or how do you answer it? I can tell you how I answered it. I told him not to worry about it. I said, don't worry about that right now. Why don't you just find out who Jesus is first? Get in a relationship with Jesus, a real one, and then let's see what happens. Because I truly believe if you truly have Jesus in you, you'll stop lying, you'll stop cheating, you'll stop stealing, right? You'll stop fornicating, right? You'll stop these things. Now maybe it doesn't happen overnight, right? Because we go through trials and tribulations and we have our own struggles. But it's not because God hasn't made us new. It's because part of us doesn't want to be new. Part of us still doesn't know how to be new, right? We may still struggle, but we can't accept that struggle, right? Keep praying on your knees. Because I know some of us in here are like, but Pastor, I'm still struggling with this. I know that. I still struggle with things. And I keep pushing into God. I keep pushing into God. God help me, right? And he will. And before you know it, time passes. and those things start to fade away, right? So let's cover, what are some of the attributes or characteristics of God that we have, all right? I only got a few things here. We're creative. We like to design things. We like to create music even. We like to draw. We like to paint. How many people here like drawing? I do, and I'm horrible at it, right? I like singing. How many people here like to sing? And I'm horrible at that too. Right? Now, how many people here write poetry? I wrote poetry to my beautiful wife. She liked it. All right? But we do, just instinctively, we like creating things, you know? We like solving problems. We like doing these things. God created the universe. He created the heavens and the earth. He created mankind. He created the animals. We're intelligent. Intellectually, we are intelligent, right? Now, some of you may say, well, I know somebody that's not intelligent. I had a guy in the Army. I don't know if I've actually ever told this story. I had a guy, he was a sergeant. The ranking goes private, private, private first class, then specialist, then sergeant, and then they're all different ranks of sergeant after that, right? So, anyways, he was an E5 sergeant, and I was a private. This dude was dumb, all right? There's no sugarcoating it. I'm not going to say he was neurotic. He just had bad parents, all right? So, anyways, your military score, right? Everybody's probably heard of ASVAB score. And it can be a variation depending on how many people we need and what the score is to get in. But on average, we're going to say between 31 and 50, you kind of qualify for things, but you ain't going to get a whole bunch of bonuses or anything. But anything from 50 and above all the way to 99, you'll be able to qualify for stuff and all this good stuff, right? But that doesn't matter once you're in the Army. They have a GT score, which is a general test score, kind of like overall, your intellectual ability. And then they have an ST score, which is a standard score, right? So those are your most two important. Now, the average Army guy might have a GT of like 105, kind of like your intelligence. The average person in America's IQ is about 101. I just read that. All right? So your average GT score is about 105, relatively close to the, we'll say 101, all right? Average intellect. All right? But see, if you go down off of that and you get into the low 80s, you didn't even score 31. You know what I mean? Then you get into the 70s and you're like, I don't know how you got into the military type guy, right? And he had a 78. And here I am saying I don't tell stories, and now I'm telling a story. All right? Anyways, I'm being specific on this story. I'm going to tell it good, right? Anyway, so there's a program in the military that has where you can go to a school, to a class, specifically to raise those two scores. So they want your score to be like a 110. If you can get a 110, you qualify for everything in the military except for being an officer, because you have to have a 115. And then on the ST is 101. He goes to class, comes back, and he's bragging to us how he lowered his score from 78 to 73. And I thought, this guy's going to lead me into war. And then the scouts came by about that time and says, hey, if you have a GT of 110 or higher, we want you to try out. And I was like, I want to try out. All right? But we do have critical thinking, you know? We do. We think, should I do this? Should I do that? Or, you know, what type of decision? Now, sometimes we don't have critical thinking, and you know, once a week I'm in the jail meeting people that don't have critical thinking, right? But most people have critical thinking skills. We can have a problem and we can solve a problem. See, this one right here is, we love to talk, we love to communicate. Most of us do, right? So we communicate through what? Songs. We communicate through writing, right? I wrote a book, right? There's communication there. And we communicate through talking, right? If you hang out with Joe, you're going to communicate by listening. And he's going to talk, which is good for translation. Me and him actually talk a lot, so it's not just him. But we communicate together. This is something that God does with us, does he not? How many people here pray? How many people here pray? Raise your hand high and proud. Okay, because I want to make sure I don't talk to anybody. All right. So you guys pray. How many people here listen to God? Good. See, it's a two-way street, right? And sometimes we need to listen more than we talk, right? We're in relationship. We're relational creatures. We do. Yes, you always have the oddball that doesn't like people, right? And they're not in relation. I understand that, right? We don't want to go off of the miraculous or the unusual, okay? It's like when they find bones. Have you ever seen where they say, we found a new species of a person? They find one skeleton of one person that's 2 foot tall, and somehow that became a whole species. Have you ever noticed that? I'm not talking about the anomaly. I'm talking about the average person enjoys being in a relationship with others, right? We're relational creatures. God has created us that way. I mean, not everybody's like that, right? The wolf pack might be a wolf pack, but the grizzly bear, he wants to be by himself, right? We love. I'm keeping this one up there so my wife can see the love. But we do love. This is our newest grandchild. This is our newest grandchild. Thank you. All right. God has the capacity to love us, and we have the capacity to love as well. And that capacity, honestly, I think I see it in dogs. You know, they say humans are the only ones that can love. I don't know. I think I've seen my dog. She looks at me like, she's my dog too, not hers. All right? She got the other one, the crazy one, right? That new one we got is out of its gorge, all right? We're caring, we're compassionate. We have empathy, right? We have the fruits of the Spirit. Now, we're spirit being, right? God's Spirit. Now, keep in mind, when you go into the Old Testament, spirit and soul's the same thing. It's the same word, okay? I know we talk about having a trinity of the body, the soul, and the spirit, right? We're not trying to look at ourselves and compare us to God, okay? But we have our soul and our spirit in Hebrew is the same thing. But the Bible often speaks of nature and spirit. The natural being wants to experience in every life, eating, drinking, doing work, doing life, etc. However, often people are not human beings having a spiritual experience. And this is what we need to do, is we're too busy in life, are we not? I mean, like today, right now, if you guys drove down to where the hot dog stand is, right? A whole bunch of families out there playing baseball. Little kids playing baseball, you know? I remember one time I heard a story about this pastor who was meeting with his family, and they asked him, do you guys love God? And they said, of course we do. What's the highest priority you have in your life? And they said, God is. They said, that's wonderful, that's what we want. Let me see your planner. They pull out their planner, and what do you do on Monday? We get up in the morning, we feed the kids, and we rush out of the house, and we go to work. And then we get home at night, and we rush to make dinner, and we feed all the kids, and then we sit down and relax, right? And then on Tuesdays, we do the same thing, except for now we're eating on the road because we're taking our kids to practice. And then once we drop those kids off of practice, we go to this other practice, and they learn how to play the violin. And then on Wednesday is similar to Tuesday, except for the other kids are doing this type of practice, and then we're going over here doing this. And then Thursday's similar. And then Fridays is game day, right? We got things and events and concerts that we have to go to on Friday, and Saturday is the same way. And then, of course, Sunday's the best day because we got to go to church, right? And then it says, well, why do you do all those things with your kids? And I said, because I want them to be well prepared for life. I want them to be well-rounded, and besides that, if they learn how to play music or they learn how to play sports and they do all these things, they might get scholarships to go to college. And then the pastor said, well then, really your priorities is your children and ensuring that they are prepared for life and that they can have scholarships and they're well-educated. And they said, yes, of course they are, but it's not God, because actually I don't see anywhere God's on this list except for Sunday morning. You're not reading to them. You're not praying with them. You're not teaching them. You're doing all these other things. And we get busy with life, right? Where's your priorities with God? And when you have a priority with God and you truly dig deep down into Him, you'll start to reflect Him. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror, right? Now it's interesting that the Scriptures compares God's word to a mirror. And then you look at yourself in the mirror and you walk away, and after looking at yourself, you don't even know what it looks like. So do we do that on a Sunday service? Do you do that with God? Do we just hear His word but not be doers of His word? Right? In order to reflect God's image, we must look into His word, represent His word, and reflect the image of God on a daily basis. How many of you here have ever been somewhere, I don't care, store, gas station, wherever it might be, and you thought to yourself, God wants me to do this, right? Now, most of the time, it's never like, oh, God wants me to read the Bible, right? Because you should probably already be doing that. It's not like God sits there and goes, oh, I want you to pray, because you should already be doing that, right? Oh, no, I want you to gather, and that's one of the ones that we do the least out of the three, but you should already be doing that. No, most of the time he says, no, I want you to do this, and now you're going to face, just like Teresa says, so when we go to the Union Gospel Mission, and you're afraid to pray for somebody because you don't know them, or you're afraid because you're too busy to be there on a Friday night, right? So I'm not going to go there, Pastor, because this. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt my feelings. And I know there are legitimate reasons, but a lot of times there's not, because we're afraid. But see, once you get out of your comfort zone and you move into a zone that's not quite so comfortable, and you do that on a regular basis, all of a sudden it becomes normal, just like the 110%, right? So then people are going to start to think, man, look at that person there. Now I'm talking about peers. I'm not talking about people on the outside, because they're not going to see you but once in a blue moon. They're not comparing you to everyone else. They're just saying, wow, that person did good for me. What I'm talking about is we start to reflect what Christ looks like here, and the person that is maybe not so brave, or the person that is maybe new, sees what you're doing and starts to, maybe I can reflect that image. Paul talks about that, right? So we're representatives here for Christ to our brethren. How many people here are afraid to talk to strangers? And be honest. Okay? You're afraid to talk to strangers. How many people here were afraid to talk to strangers and they're no longer? And I'm raising my hand with that. Okay? Why am I no longer afraid to talk to strangers? It's because I've done it. Right? And now it doesn't bother me. So maybe find someone that has been in your shoes and help them, or you be helped by them, right? Do you want to be stronger? Do you want to be better for Christ, or are you happy where you're at? I like this chair. It fits my rear end, right? I sat in Bill's chair one day, and it's like, man, this is off. I think my rear end's larger. All right. Knowing God. The more we know God, the better our image will look like His. I'm going to play this little video here, all right?
Some people know God only philosophically. He's a concept. Other people know God informationally. But God is after so much more than that. All through the Bible, the one ingredient you need, if you're serious about getting to know God, is a passion for it. You gotta want it. If you don't know God, if you're not pursuing the knowledge of God, that means your life is not being lived for the purpose you were created. We regularly hear people say, well, I want to know God's will for my life, who aren't pursuing the person of God. Don't go looking for the plan, look for the planner. And the Holy Spirit's job is to turn up the light so that you see God more clearly and experience him more personally. When you are growing in your knowledge of God, the life of Christ is going to be reproduced in you. The Bible calls it the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5. Your God, who wants to get to know you, will use a crisis for deliverance so that you get to see him and so that you understand that his wisdom is greater than your knowledge. I want you to come out of this series with a fire that says to God, I want to know you. I want to draw near to you. I want to experience you. I want to abide with you. I want to get close to you. I want to fulfill the purpose that you have. I want to hear from you.
So now that's on Right Now Media, and Right Now Media is free to you guys. All right, so if you guys have not signed up for it, get with us, get signed up for it. I just have to shoot you an email. Right now, I'm needing somebody, if anybody here is interested in doing our newsletters, because then we have a little app thing on it. You take it or whatever, the little QR code, right? And then you can sign up for Right Now Media as well there. But if you haven't signed up for it, I mean, it's kind of like a Christian YouTube with teachings. You know what I mean? How many people here use Right Now Media? You guys like it? You find it valuable? I mean, you got it on your phone, you get it on your tablet, you get it on your computer. Heck, I even got it on my TV. I put the app on my television, you know? So it's free to you, and it's got a lot of teaching to include this one. So now, reflecting Jesus Christ. Have you noticed that when, I've said this before, but like, when you see a couple and they've been married for like 50 years, right? And they start to look alike. Their attributes start to look alike. Their facial expressions start to look the same. Well, see, we want that with Christ, right? If we start to be engaged with him on a regular basis, we start to look like him, would we not? Right? We're not going to be him. We're never going to be him. We're not perfect. I already messed that up a long time ago, yesterday. Probably this morning, actually. All right? The more time we spend with Jesus, the more we're going to look like him. When they saw the courage of Peter and John, who's Peter and John? These are two guys that are not well educated in the scriptures, right? It'd be like us going down to the mall, and the barista behind the barista all of a sudden starts speaking some type of Einstein theories to you, right? That blow your mind. You're like, what the heck? Why are you in barista? What college you go to? I didn't go to college, right? Really, how do you know all this stuff? Because I hung around Jesus. And see, this is what these two guys did. They are around Jesus. Now, they were educated at the end. I don't care what anybody says. When you hang around God for 3.5 years, you're going to be educated. But according to the world, these guys were not. And all of a sudden, they're like, oh my gosh, these guys are talking theology that is blowing our mind, right? This is incredible. We need to listen to them too. And see, wouldn't you guys like that in life? Wouldn't you like to be able to sit there and talk to somebody and they listen? And I'm not talking about in the jail when I go there, a captive audience. Right? No, I'm talking about on the street. Right? And I'm talking about the homeless guy. I was driving this morning, right? Coming into, and this guy, like, all of a sudden, he's like grabbing his chest, he's bent over, and I pull over. I'm like, you okay? You okay? And he's like, I got shot. And I'm looking for blood, and anyways, I realized he didn't get shot. And then he's telling me, dodge the bullets. And I'm like, okay, I gotta go. You know what I mean? So, but it would have been, when we talk to some of those people, all right? And I'm not saying we don't talk to them, because I do talk to them, right? Sometimes when you talk to these people out there and they're not making any sense and you're not getting through, right? But someday it might penetrate and you might not be there. Because that tells me in the Bible that when I talk to somebody and then the person that brings them to salvation, we're both rewarded, right? Just because I didn't bring them to salvation, what it says is, God, as long as I'm doing kingdom work, then I'm going to get rewards for it. Now, some of us, and I've heard Christians say this, right? I'm not doing this to get awards. I'm not or rewards or gems in my hat, or I'm just doing this for the love of God, right? Now, there's two things that I've saw with this experience. Did I speak proper? All right, there's two things that I've noticed. One, they don't do it themselves. They found themselves an excuse that, well, if I go I don't have to have a reward for Jesus Christ. He's my reward, and that's good enough. And then they don't do anything. I think it's an excuse not to do something, right? Secondly, they don't understand the value of this reward that God's given me. I don't really understand the reward itself, and I don't understand how I'm going to respond to this reward, right? But God found it important enough to put it in the scripture and says, look, what you do matters. And because you're doing what I've asked you to do, right, I'm going to give you a reward. I don't know what that means. I don't understand. I mean, I know what it says in the scriptures, but I don't know how that's really going to apply to me when I'm in heaven. But if God says to run the race as if I'm going to run it to win it, right? So let's take those two things. Are you running the race to win it? Are you? Because if you are, you get a trophy at the end, if you will, right? There's something at the end that you're going to be rewarded for because you ran the race to win it. And then you ask yourself, well, God, Pastor, I don't know what the race I'm running. I feel like I'm just running on a treadmill and I'm going nowhere. Right? But you're not, because it says in Matthew chapter 28 to go and make disciples and teach them everything I've taught you, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? That's the race we're running. That's the minimum. Once you start doing that, God might give you a couple more things, right? That is a minimum. That's not a suggestion. It's a commandment. Just like taking communion. It's not a suggestion. It's a commandment. And if you don't take communion, then you might want to ask yourself why. Right? Because God says to do this. God commands us to go share the gospel with others. And if you're not doing this, then you might ask yourself, why? Why am I not? Did he give you a spirit of fear? No, he did not. You know, how many people here heard the definition of courage? Courage is doing something despite the fear that you face. Basically, that's what it is, right? So take God's word and be courageous with it. Go share it. Honestly, if all Christians would do that and stop worrying about, I need to go out and have miracles happen. I need to go out and do this. I need to go out and do that, right? And you think about it. And I'm not against miracles. I'm not against the glory of God. I'm not against any of these things. So don't get me wrong. But a lot of times I've seen the people do the treasure hunt. We're going to pray and God's going to give us a word and this is what we're all going to look for. And then you get there and then what are they saying? See, I knew I seen that vision. See, I knew this was going to happen. Look, I healed this person and look how great God is. I did this. When it's about them and not about him. Right? They get excited for something that they did when it really had nothing to do with you. And they start to expose themselves as false prophets. Right? Just go out and share the word of God, with others. Just do that, because he's commanded us to do it. And I bet you things will start happening. Right? You go share the gospel with somebody and they don't come to Christ. You go share the gospel with somebody, they don't come to Christ. You go share the gospel with somebody and it's 100 and some people later and no one said yes. You're still blessed. You still get rewards. But God, or Pastor, I'm not doing it for the rewards. That's fine, but God says if you're going to go do this, he's going to give this. And that's okay because he says run the race to win it. Right? Don't run the race just to survive it. Don't run the race just to get through it. Don't run the race in hopes that I make it to the finish line. What's the race that he's talking about? He's talking about life. Right? You guys have heard this, I'm sure. On a tombstone, born 19, whatever. Right? I don't know, give me a date. 1970. And then he dies in 2070. Lived 100 years. Wow. But what matters is that dash in between. What did you do during that time? Right? What did you do? And here's the better question. What did you do for Christ? Because there's plenty of people throughout history that we still know the dash, but they didn't do anything for Christ. Right? We know, okay, here's a litmus test for you. And you can go out on the streets with this. How many people heard of Alexander the Great? Probably most everybody. Joan of Arc. She was a Christian though, right? I think. All right, what about Napoleon? All right. What about Hitler? All right. What about George Washington? All right. Can you name any other presidents outside the last 5? Right. Okay. Besides the last 5, I said. All right. So, but now when you start and you get into the outside, now that's just normal. And if we go out there, a lot of people may not even know some of the names that we mentioned, right? But when you say, who's heard of God? Everybody in the entire world's heard of God. Their definition of God might be different, but they've heard of God, right? Now, how many? If you said Adam and Eve, probably just about most everybody in the world has heard of Adam and Eve, right? If you said Abraham, probably at least half of the world has heard of Abraham, right? You say Jesus, again, that's like God. Probably 90-some%, if not 100% of the world have heard Jesus. Probably John, maybe Paul, right? Probably Paul. Start naming, but you just go, Samson, you just go through the scriptures and look at all the people that are still known throughout the world, right? Because of what they've done for Christ. Now, my name may never be mentioned, your name may never be mentioned. Nobody's going to know me 10 years after I pass, right? You go through a grievance when someone dies, right? Most people are going to be sad for the first week. People that are close to them are going to be sad for maybe, a few months. The relatives, maybe a year, right? Children and spouses, longer than that, right? But eventually, it fades away, and you move on. But God never fades away, and that dash matters. Try to imitate me, even as I myself try to imitate the Messiah. This is Paul. This is what I was talking about. If we can get the worship team up here. This is what I was talking about before. We can get the worship team up. You can write notes, Dave. Go ahead. You can write down your notes. I just didn't know if anybody heard me. I covered my mouth when I said it on accident. Where are you at in your walk? Do you feel confident? Do you feel strong? And if you say, I don't know, then find someone that can walk with you. Find someone that you can, look at and imitate, right? Because this is what Paul says. Hey, look, imitate me because I imitate Christ, right? See, the problem is this is one of the things that I've seen. So some of you are sitting here saying, great, I'll wait for that person to come up to me and say, hey, I was wondering if you could mentor me, right? And you just keep waiting and waiting and waiting because they're afraid. We already established that, right? They're afraid to talk to people. They're afraid to talk to strangers. And they're going to be afraid to ask for help. So maybe you as a mature Christian, someone's off the bottle, why don't you walk up to somebody and say, hey, can you and I have coffee? Right? Can you and I maybe become better friends? I don't know, whatever you want to tell them. Hey, can I mentor you? Right? I want to do well. So can I walk alongside you? Maybe we should do it that way. And I've suggested that quite a few years ago, and all the people that were mature Christians in the church, nothing was happening. I asked them, I said, what are you doing? They said, well, nobody really wants to. And I said, who have you asked? Well, I asked so-and-so, and they didn't show up. How many times did you ask them? Once. Why do we give up so quick? God hasn't given up on me. I mean, he pursued me my entire life, even though when I wasn't doing anything to represent him at all, he still died on the cross for me. So I challenge you guys as mature Christians to look to your left and right and ask them, hey, if you look to your left and the person you're like pretty confident that they should be doing the same, right? And then they look at you, then look the other direction. Find somebody to help walk with. And if you're walking with somebody already, great. All right? Can you guys do that? All right, let's stand. Teresa and I are going to be praying for you guys today. So, you can turn off my mic in a minute. But if you guys are struggling with your walk, if you don't know exactly where you're at and you're struggling, I want you to come up here and be prayed for. Could I get Romero and Abba up here? I want you guys to help us pray. If you guys are walking and you want to just be better in your walk, come up and get prayer. Okay? Obviously, if you don't know Christ or you want to recommit yourself to Christ, then I highly encourage you to come up and get prayer. That's the priority. That's the best miracle. That's the one miracle I always go, wow, that is so cool. All right? Energy feels low. I'm talking about y'all, to include myself. Feels low today. Don't know why. But no matter what, we're still representatives of Christ, right? Come up and get prayer if you need it. If you don't need it, come up and get prayer anyways.